All right, welcome to yet another fabulous Linux Zoo crew. And today on the Zoo, we have an all-star cast with us. We are talking about Manjaro, the future of user-friendly Linux. Before we start today's show, I'd like to share with you a few words from our founder of the Linux distro community, Voltam.
Hi, I'm Voltam, founder of the Linux distro community. The Linux distro community is a place for people to hang out and discuss Linux distros, software, and open source. The Linux distro community is a community funded by its members for its members. We are a friendly, welcoming community that encourages people who use Linux operating systems and software to share their passion and knowledge with other people. We believe that when people share information freely, everyone benefits. We'd love to see you become a part of the Linux distro community. You can voice chat with us on Mumble or text chat with us in IRC. Head over to linuxdistrocommunity.com for details. Join in today in the sharing of knowledge and the freedom that a Linux operating system gives people. Thank you.
All right, Matthew Moore is co-hosting with us. How you doing, Matthew?
Pretty good.
And now you use all these different OSs. You got Windows, you got Mac going on, and now you're running Manjaro. So tell us, what is your favorite distro?
Well, Manjaro, obviously.
Why don't you introduce our guests?
Well, we have Countryfied Linux, Edge 226, Iron Claw. We have Rob Spatry, and our special guest tonight is Phil Mueller from the Manjaro team.
That's right. It's an all-star cast. We've got YouTubers. We've got developers on the show. Welcome, one and all. And I got to say, Phil, it is an honor to have you on the show. Sort of like, like meeting Eddie Van Halen in person, kind of, sort of, maybe. How you doing, Phil?
I'm fine, and you?
Doing great. And I got to tell you, we also have Rob, who has his own Manjaro spins that he's got going on. So, and he's on the development team as well. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Awesome. And of course, we have Countryfied Linux, and he has a show on YouTube where he is doing distribution reviews. How's it going?
Doing good. Good to be here.
All right, we've got Edge 226. He's got his own spin of Manjaro Linux. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it is a mix of XFCE, KWin, and CairoDoc. And it's got the XFCE settings incorporated into the KDE KWin settings incorporated into the XFCE settings manager. So it's easy to use in that way. It hasn't been updated in a while. I also have my own YouTube channel as well under Cutting Edge Linux, and I have a website, cuttingedgelinux.com, geared towards teaching new people to Linux the command line.
And then, of course, we have Iron Claw, and we've sat up many a late night trying to get different games and stuff working in Linux. He also has his own YouTube show where he teaches people how to get some games working on Linux. Tell us about that.
Well, I haven't made a video in a while, and I'm still kind of looking for my direction on that, because I've actually kind of covered most of the major methods that I know to do what you're talking about with getting the games to work. So, anything else I do would basically be repeating what I've covered before. So I'm kind of looking for a new direction on the channel, and I'm working on that.
All right, good stuff indeed. And then, of course, we have Matthew Moore. How's it going, buddy?
Pretty good. It's been a long day.
Yeah, and he's always putting up reviews and tutorials on just about everything. But the topic of discussion today is Manjaro, the future of user-friendly Linux. And I got to say, Phil, this is an awesome distribution. And I've used Arch Linux. I've tried just a little bit of everything out there. And I've got to say, you've got one of the best user-friendly experiences for the end user out there. And I can remember the first time I reviewed Manjaro, the very first release, and this was like almost 3 years ago. I didn't even know what Arch Linux was, but I knew that someday I was actually going to be using this as my main distro. I've watched this evolve, and it has grown into something that is absolutely amazing. Can you briefly give us a little history? Why Manjaro? Why did you start your own distribution?
Well, I started distribution Manjaro with Roland Singer. He's also from Germany. I met him actually at a sports center, and we thought, hey, you do Linux, we do sport together, why not joining up? And so it started at something like 3 years ago.
Yeah, and it's an amazing distribution. Now, tell us a little bit in the beginning, because I do remember, back then when I reviewed that first release. I mean, it was as close to Arch as an Arch system is. And at that time, was that actually using packages from Arch's repositories, much like Bridge Linux and some of the other availabilities that are out there?
No, the first release it was done by Roland. It was 5 years ago. He did his first spin, as I was still part of the Chakra system. And later on, 2 years later, I switched over to Manjaro, and then we started developing in the dark. So over half a year, we have developed without publicity, and then bing, bang, boom, we had the 0.8 release out there, and we already had their own Arch packages. So we didn't change. So the 0.8 is the first one. We already had our own repositories.
Oh, so that's a good thing, because there was a little bit of confusion there, because in the beginning I was thinking maybe they were tapping off. So you've always had your own repositories from the beginning. That's a good piece of information to know. Okay, let's speak about the rise in popularity a little bit. Because we've seen more and more people coming over to Manjaro Linux and really loving it. Let's go ahead and start with you, Countryfied. What are your impressions of it, and why do you feel that it's a great distribution for you to use?
Well, to be honest, at first I was kind of skeptical about it. The word Arch in there in the description, so that'll scare almost anybody. But someone else in another chat was telling me about it, saying it's user-friendly, and, well, he's a lot less knowledgeable than I am, so I figured, hey, I'll look at it, and been using it ever since.
Edge.
I think part of the user-friendliness comes into the IRC channel, where we've got a bunch of people in there that know the system fairly well. Ringo32, who was in here earlier, and just came back. He knows the system very well. He does a lot of support. There's a bunch of us in there that really know the support side, and we do the best that we can with that.
Ironclaw, now you've just started testing this. What are your impressions?
Yeah, I'm kind of the resident newbie. I actually just installed Manjaro for the first time 3 or 4 days ago, and it had a few hiccups, and I kind of expected that, because it is a beta release. And we'll probably have an opportunity to go further into depth with those hiccups along the show goes. But so far, very, very favorable.
Now, interestingly enough, Matthew has given Manjaro quite a bit of coverage on his show, so I don't want to take away from what you've done there. But share with us some of your impressions, Matt.
Well, I've been using it for, I don't know, probably since August, and it's been mostly positive so far. I was surprised about how user-friendly it was. I did try Arch as a total Arch noob, and it was a little bit of a problem for me. I couldn't get Wi-Fi working, but I discovered Manjaro, per Spatry's recommendation, and I've pretty much been here ever since. I've had a few minor hiccups here and there, but nothing any worse than any other distribution, to be honest. It's been pretty rock solid for me.
And you even went on in your YouTube videos to show the difference between installing packages on an Ubuntu system versus Manjaro. Would you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, well, the reason I did that is because a lot of people focus on the Ubuntu-based distributions as the go-to distributions for user-friendly Linux. And a lot of people try to steer away from, rolling releases in general, but especially distributions that have Arch attached to it in some fashion. And I just demonstrated that I actually find it easier to issue update commands and so forth inside of Manjaro than I do in the Ubuntu-based distributions, apt-get versus Pacman, essentially. And, the whole purpose of that was to prove that you don't have to be afraid of a more advanced distribution. They are user-friendly. Some of them are.
And I feel that, from my perspective, because I ran Arch for a while, the fact of the matter is, a lot of times when updates would come in, you had to read the documentation before even opening up a terminal and running Pacman SYU. It would give you instructions on things that you had to do to ensure a smooth update. And and part of the evolution of this is that they've taken these little things out of the equation by adding scripts. Could you explain that a little bit to us, Phil?
Well, when Arch Linux starts new packages, sometimes we have file conflicts. So I started a script preparing automatically what the user should manually do, and we engineered with Pamac or Pacman as well, and you simply do your SUV and everything is fine.
And for the most part, it has been fairly painless. But and we'll get to this later on with the importance of keeping the system up to date and that sort of thing. But how are you pleased with the way things are progressing right now in terms of popularity with Manjaro Linux?
Well, it's actually fine. So DistroWatch, we have some issues, but we will figure that out. So I see a lot of hits on my page and a lot of downloads, and everybody is happy with it in the ERC channel, and we have good feedbacks, good reviews. So I think we are on a good track here.
Absolutely. And now, Ringo, why don't you share with us some of your impressions on Manjaro and why you feel that it is the premier Linux distribution for you to use?
I like community especially. I am coming from LMDE and first saw a video of you on Manjaro around September 2012, and yeah, I'm gonna hit that and hung it.
Rob, what is your impressions?
I started using Arch Linux as my main OS almost 5 years ago. For Manjaro, the support and the friendliness of the community is amazing. That didn't attract me to it so much because I personally didn't need that. What attracted me to it was that I was going to get something that's Arch Linux compatible, that all of my Arch knowledge works with, and with 3 extra repositories of testing between the packages and myself. Basically just a more stabilized, more tested Arch Linux.
And I have to agree because, Manjaro brings to the table all of the good things that Arch has. But, the thing is, I want a good system that I can use from day to day without having to, spend time maintaining it.
Let's talk about updates. How many people have had problems with updates? I know that I have. I know that sometimes when I update the system, sometimes the remote servers won't be synced up all at the same time. So I'll get updates, and after the updates are completed, sometimes I'll get errors saying that the packages I have installed are newer than what's in the current repositories. Has anybody else had any issues with that? Maybe start with you, Rob.
I haven't had it personally, but I spend a lot of, and I pick my mirror. I actually go into the list and specifically choose my own mirror. But I have seen it a lot on the Manjaro forums that people do get that. It is possible we have a couple of mirrors out there that are not syncing regularly enough or maybe not properly, and that is an issue. But we probably do need to spend a little bit of time trying to track down exactly which couple of mirrors. There's not a lot of them. It's just 2 or 3 of them that there's problems with, and we probably need to track down, figure out what they are, email these guys, and say, can you increase your rsync schedule or something.
Yeah, what about you, Country Fried? Have you ever had any stability issues doing updates on this system?
Oh, no, I haven't, no. It's all been smooth for me so far.
Yeah, it has been mostly smooth. I guess with any rolling release, there are some things to be expected, but for the most part, it has been very stable. What about you, Edge?
I have not personally had issues, but when I built my machine, I built it with Linux in mind, and that being said, it has Intel and NVIDIA in it. I know some of the big issues have been ATI and XOR compatibility, but that didn't affect me. Neither has the issue with the mirror syncing, because I guess the closest mirror and the fastest mirror to me when I run Pacman mirror-g is it's a good mirror. So I have not personally had any syncing issues or anything of that sort.
Yeah, Spatry did mention that he had issues with the ATI and XOR conflicts as well on the recent update. What he said he did to correct it was he just removed some of the proprietary components from ATI, installed the updates, and then once he did that, he reinstalled the AT components and everything started working right. So, Spatry, those ATI conflicts that you had with the updates, everything went smoothly after you reinstalled the proprietary packages after the updates?
To answer your question, on my last update, it basically stated that there were some packages that were in conflict. So all I had to do was remove those packages to allow Pacman to to continue with the update. And then all I had to do was reinstall the packages, and everything went fine. And then just to be on the safe side, I just went ahead and I forced the reinstall of the Catalyst drivers, and everything worked out just fine. Now, the only other issue I had with updates is the Broadcom driver. For some reason, it doesn't want to work with my hardware, so I just swapped it out for the Indus wrapper, and everything is ponies and rainbows now.
Yeah. Well, Ringo, what about you? Have you had any stability issues?
Not really. I've got the mirrors I made by myself with the Pac-Man mirror slash strip I. I use a few mirrors, so no local newer, but no further issues.
Can I just quickly say something regarding AMD ATI graphic drivers?
I'm all ears.
For like a leading edge rolling release like Manjaro and of course Arch, AMD ATI don't make it very easy on us in that they don't release their drivers for the new Xorg server ABI very fast. When NVIDIA gets them out early, and by the time Arch is ready to roll the Xorg server in, like a new version of the Xorg server, NVIDIA normally has a driver out that supports the new ABI. With AMD ATI, they usually don't. And like we have to package an entire second version of the Xorg server and roll that out to you. And that's why it can get a bit complex, and sometimes you'll get conflicts because it's an entire different version of the Xorg server that we need to roll out to you so you can have the AMD ATI proprietary drivers working. It would really be nice if they could just keep up a bit with the Xorg ABI like NVIDIA does, then we wouldn't have these problems.
Yeah, and that was the only thing, because there was a level of confusion stating that, I had to remove some components of Xorg in order to get that driver working. But the thing is, after, enabling and letting all the updates come in, and removing those packages so the update could complete, everything went fine, and I didn't have any issues with it at all.
Yeah, I mean, we work very hard. I know Phil has worked very hard towards making sure it is fine, that we can roll out this different Xorg, server, and at least most of the time, or it's meant to all the time, it does just work fine. So yeah, we're trying.
All right, has everybody covered all their issues and that sort of thing?
Actually, I have had issues with Pulse, and that there'd be times that the sound would not be working, and then somehow it'd be automatically muted, and I'd open Pulse Audio Volume Control and unmute it. Or if I couldn't, I'd usually fix it by deleting the Pulse config folder and then rebooting, and then usually works then.
Ironclaw.
Well, yeah, I did have a slight issue with Pulse too. For some reason, it I don't know what happened to the configuration, but I was getting where I could open the volume control and it wouldn't be muted, and I could see the bar moving like sound was playing, but it was nothing coming out of my speakers. And to fix that, I ended up having to basically remove the entire Pulse audio system. Delete all the configuration files, then reinstall it.
Edge.
That usually happens in my experience, that it is pumping to the wrong audio layout, because I have internal speakers and I have an HDMI TV that has volume. So sometimes I'll find that it's getting to the wrong audio, and that's when I'm having issues with. It doesn't look like it's muted, but I don't hear anything coming out because it's actually going out of my headphones.
Phil.
Okay.
Country.
Well, I actually had another issue today. I'm not sure if it was directly linked to OpenBox itself, but for some reason I wasn't able to get HDMI sound to my TV. My speakers on my laptop stayed on instead of the sound going to my TV. Even after going into Pulse Audio Volume Control, I switched the configuration to the HDMI out, and it still didn't go through. So I'll be working on that and see if I can figure out what it is.
Yeah, now most of the problems I've had with Pulse Audio, I would just open up the Pulse Audio Volume Control, and I'd find that the audio levels were set down all the way. And yes, so I actually use the Pulse Audio Volume Control to fix any issues that I've had. And between different applications themselves, I would either assign them to ALSA or Pulse Audio, and that seemed to pretty much fix any problems I was having. So I don't know if, but the thing is, I hear about this on other Linux distributions as well. This is not central to Manjaro GNU Linux, because I've had similar issues on Ubuntu derivatives as well. So, there could be a problem sometimes between ALSA and Pulse communicating. Go ahead, Edge.
I would say, yeah, it's a Pulse issue. It's not any particular distro issue, because Pulse is used among pretty much all distros. So if there's a Pulse bug, we're going to see it everywhere.
Yeah, I didn't think that it was necessarily specific to Manjaro, but it was just kind of unusual, and it caught my attention.
Okay, now in pre-show conversation, Edge and I were talking a little bit, and we were talking about, let's say I installed Manjaro 086, and now we're on 089 release candidate and decided I wanted to update, would cause a problem. Why don't you share with us a little bit on the importance of keeping the system updated?
Well, you have to do this because of the Manjaro system scripts. And if you go to too big of a gap in the time period of the releases of Manjaro, you end up where the scripts, it doesn't fill in the gaps between those updates. So you end up with things that needed to happen that didn't happen. I have a couple ideas for Phil M that could potentially resolve this, but I'm not sure how they would be implemented. But that's something that I will speak with him later.
Now, what do you have to say about that, Phil, in terms of installing an older distro and then trying to update that? Because do you feel that this is something that does potentially cause problems for people?
Well, we try always to be backward compatible, so the last supported distro is the stable one, so everything should be fine if you have the 088 version. I didn't test the 087 version or the 086 version. I hopefully think it's working. I have to test it myself if I pull out an old install media and then try to update it to the latest stable packages. Maybe it works, maybe not. I have to figure it out.
Edge.
I can verify that this, in fact, does not work properly because there's someone in the IRC channel that says part of the season they have internet access, part of the season they don't, and every time they come back to the point where they have internet access, the update breaks the system and they have to reinstall. So I can verify myself through talking with people on IRC that it does not function as a big time gap thing. My suggestion would be to have maybe a diff between what version they're currently running and what the latest version is, and apply all updates in between, and that would work. But I don't know how that would be implemented necessarily within Manjaro.
Rob, do you have any thoughts on that?
Look, just that Manjaro is still obviously based on Arch Linux, and for a large percentage is Arch Linux, like, direct binary copies of packages. And, you can read straight off the Arch Wiki that a bad practice for updating is things like updating once a year. It's the system is, designed. I'm not saying we shouldn't try to address it. So the earlier ISOs will update, try to fix up Manjaro system script so it will work. I'm not saying we shouldn't do that. I'm just saying people should understand that they are using a distribution that is designed to be updated regularly.
Absolutely.
That's in the core of it.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. So, you'll see there's a little icon on your taskbars, and when it turns red, it lets you know it's time to get that update. And, and the thing is, that's what I do. I keep it up to date all the time. And as a matter of fact, I even update to the latest kernels. I want to be on the cutting edge, but not necessarily bleeding edge. You had a comment there, Country?
Oh, yes, I did. Actually, I just thought of an idea to solve that. Like, what if there was a website link that had the history of updates? So if you're away from home for like a month or so, and you didn't want to break something coming back, you can slowly update it. Like, this week this happened, next week that happened, and you can do the updates in the order they came in while you were gone.
Now, it's my understanding that we have been seeing updates come in at least once a month. Am I correct in that? Sometimes sooner than once a month, but I believe it's once a month now.
Well, we update daily in the unstable branch. We update almost weekly in the testing branch, and we almost update 2 weeks in the stable branch right now.
Okay, and that brings us to our next topic of discussion, because we do have the three branches, the stable, the testing, and the unstable branches. Can you give us a little overview of what those are? Now, it's my understanding that packages from Arch's testing go into unstable. Could you break that down a little bit for us?
No, we don't use testing packages from Arch Linux. We only use the stable packages. So everything is pushed from the stable Arch to the unstable branch of our Manjaro distribution. And I have to prepare all the kernels or extra packages I have specifically for Manjaro. And then after some testing, we move it over to the testing branch. The larger community will test this. And after that, we'll decide with our developer team, okay, it's fine now, and then we move it to stable.
Okay, well, that's very good to know because, there was some confusion as to how the package system works. And there has been a lot of controversy online, Arch versus Manjaro Linux in that, this could be a security update that's being pushed up to Arch's repositories, but the Manjaro users aren't getting it until, weeks later. What do you have to say about that?
Well, it depends on the stability and the secureness. So there's actually one specific issue right now. It came out, let's say 2 days ago, something like that, and we didn't patch it yet. Arch did it already. It's about the local user can use the admin rights. So I don't think it's so critical. And this bug was out there for 2 years now, and now it's fixed. So the 0.4 kernel has it. So everything up this kernel has this issue as well. And yes, we are slowly patching it now.
But the thing is, we have other distributions out there. You have your Ubuntus, you have your Fedoras, you have all these other distributions out there that aren't even using packages that are as new as ours. And that raises a question in my mind. Do you think that Manjaro is a lot more stable than these other distributions that are out there because we have updated software?
It depends how you look at it. It's your computer, you're using it to do normal things like web browsing, watching videos, and typing some letters. So if you want to update, yes, sure. But I think Linux is more secure than a Windows box, for example.
Absolutely, and I would have to agree. Even a Mac is more secure than using a Windows system. So, all right, good stuff indeed. Okay, well, let's speak a little bit about the future of Manjaro. And I'll first start with you, Phil. What would you like to see in the future?
Well, in the future, I want to see the installer ready. So actually, we're working now with my friends here to get the UEFI standard up and to have more newer hardware supported. Also, we want to expand how we detect the hardwares and stuff like that. And I'm sure we will do a lot work on the package and other tools. So the package managers have now new features, and we're going to be more user-friendly than before.
Yes, and we're seeing some of that future right now because now we have PAMEC, which has the full AUR support, and you can even install a new kernel from within PAMEC, which is really neat. We now have this program which is great for KDE or OpenBox users. It begins with a T and it's on the tip of my tongue, but this application will allow you to do some configuration after you install it. And so this is another great innovation that's being brought to the table. But I want to raise this question to everybody on the board, and we'll start with you, Countryfied Linux. What would you like to see in Manjaro that it does not currently have now?
Well, one thing I'd like to see to be more inviting the new users is a more organized, better-looking package manager, kind of like compare it to Deepin Software Center or Software Manager and Linux Mint, something like that. There's also something I'd like to see disabled when we get to that part, or I can say now or whatever.
Bring it on.
Well, I'm a laptop user, and something I noticed that for me has to be disabled to be more functional is in the folder, the etc. laptop mode USB. That's something about where you got there's like an auto suspend feature for the USB devices, like a mouse. If you don't use it if you plug it in if you plug it in before you boot it up, it's fine. But if you plug it in after it's already booted up, then if you don't use it for like 2 or 3 seconds, it automatically suspends the pointer, and you got to click it and wait a couple more seconds to be able to start using it again. And that's just an inconvenience, like if you take your laptop to work with you like I do, then you come home, you gotta power down your computer and plug the mouse in to turn it back on. If you don't, I found out, I read about how to disable that, but a new user might not realize that, and that would be something for them to be convenience for them to be able to use your laptop without having to reboot it.
Rob has a comment on that.
Just on that, if that's related to laptop mode tools, which the ETC laptop mode is, or laptop mode tools, I noticed just the other day that actually got dropped out of Arch's binary repos into AUR. So the future with using laptop mode tools, I don't even know what's going to be happening with that at this point. So that may well already be getting, possibly addressed.
All right, Edge, what would you like to see in Manjaro that it doesn't currently have?
Well, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I want to see a Manjaro that is modular, that runs with AUFS files and a AUFS link to a modification directory or whatever, so it can be used easier on USB tools and stuff like that as something that isn't just a live environment, it's a productive environment and can save your changes and things like that. There's distros out there that can do it, and I personally would like to see Manjaro do that as well, in the future anyways.
Ironclaw, what's on your wish list for Manjaro?
Well, the only other major hiccup I found with it was the fact that I have an AMD SATA controller in my box, and the port multiplier option in the kernel is enabled by default. I don't know if they can actually do it, but I'd love to have a command line option to turn that off automatically in the kernel before the system boots.
Matthew, I know you've got a few things on your wish list. Out with it.
Well, in terms of the system itself and the way that I use my computer, I've been pretty happy with that part of it. It's been stable. It's pretty much been the way that I would do it if I were to build a distro. But maybe it's just because it's young, whatever, but I have run into some situations where there's programs that I simply just can't get my hands on, programs that I'd used frequently when I was an Ubuntu user, Format Junkie being one of them, Bombano DVD another. But, I imagine that through the course of natural evolution of this distro, those things will probably show up in the repositories.
Yeah, and that's the thing, when these new programs do get popular enough, there are people that make package builds so that you'd be able to create, be able to compile those things and build them from the AUR. But then again, you also have all the tools necessary to actually compile them yourself. Edge had a comment on that.
In the mention of package builds, Matthew Moore, it might be useful to learn how to make your own package builds and put them up to AUR. So when you find programs like that you loved using on another distro, you then incorporate them into the distro that you love now.
Yeah,
Ringo. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have attempted to compile Format Junkie and try a build. PDQ attempted it once before we were in the chat room previously, and it simply didn't build because of all of the dependencies and Unity stuff that's all piled in there from Ubuntu. So it's not always as easy as 1, 2, 3.
But the thing is,
of course.
But the thing is, with the package builds, though, you can remove some things as dependencies, but I don't know how well they would build and that sort of thing. Ringo, what would you like to see in Manjaro that it currently doesn't have?
Really? I don't know. It's so much to say. I think for myself, personally, some tools that can show your whole system to the developer like that. That the developer can watch monitors something is going on like that. But it's just difficult. It's too much.
Rob, what would you like to see in Manjaro that it currently doesn't have?
Well, already being worked on is GUI tools for the different MHWD commands, like better managing through the Manjaro settings manager for your kernels and all your hardware. That's already being worked on. I guess other than that, I'm pretty happy with it. Some bigger dreams, I guess, is like if we could have a repo that worked like Arch's community repo, get some package maintainers and be able to offer users packages from AUR, except they don't have to build them already in binary form, or custom packages just for Manjaro. So just something like that. And I guess a really big long-term dream is I've always wanted to see non-rolling Arch Linux. And if Manjaro ever wanted to make like an LTS version where we make a snapshot and just bug fix and security fix and have it actually be not rolling, in addition to the rolling one, I'm not saying replace it or anything like that. I think that would be great, so that we could have that highly stable distro, except using Arch Linux, using Pacman, using all the Arch technologies and Manjaro technologies.
All right, and here's something on my wish list, and this could probably be a tall order, but I'm sure this is something a lot of people out there who love streaming media would love to have. And as many of you know, Flash is ending its life in April, for Linux. And I would really love to see Pipelight support that does not interfere with a current installation of Wine. So I could have my regular Wine install and then be able to have Pipelight running, which would allow me to view Silverlight media. I would also be able to have a number of other plugins like Flash, maybe even 3D technologies. There are a number of Windows plugins that you would be able to use in your Linux browser thanks to using Pipelight. And the only distribution that I've seen that has it incorporated presently is Pinguy OS. So that's on my wish list. I don't know if that would be. I tried to build it myself, and I ran into failure once, and then the second time I built it, it did work, but it wanted to replace Wine. And I have applications that are critical that if I were to switch Wine versions, then those programs wouldn't function. So that's something that's on my wish list anyway, and I hope that's something we could see in the future. Edge.
Is that a case where using Play on Linux would potentially fix your issue of that software replacing Wine?
The only issue I would have is I'd have to figure out a way to convert my existing Wine bottle and install the version of Wine that it uses and bring that into Play on Linux, because I don't use it. I just use Wine bare metal, and then I could have Pipelight installed separately on the side.
The nice thing about Play on Linux is that it can use a different version of Wine per application. So you can use the version that works best for that particular application. And it's just got a Wine instance bottled up in its own thing. I can go through and explain that to you if you want later. Probably not tonight, though.
Yeah, I understand how that works and everything. It's just that I would want to take my existing Wine bottle that I have and convert it and bring it over. And I'm sure there's probably documentation on it. And then I could just build the Wine Pipelight myself, because it is in the AUR. And the regular version, not the Git version, the regular version seems to build it just fine for me. Okay, let's move on to our final topic at this time, because we've been at this for quite a while now. And we'll start with you, Countrified Linux. Would you recommend Manjaro to a beginner, and why?
I think that once it gets a nice looking organized software database, like I said, like Deepin or their software manager or Mint, then yeah. But other than that, I think Manjaro is the most user friendly distro out right now. It's so much easier. Like, for example, like PPA and Ubuntu, that could be a big pain in the rear end. Everybody knows that, especially when you're upgrading kernels and stuff. And overall, except for the lack of the more intuitive software manager, Manjaro, I think, is the best distro and has the best package management of all of them.
Edge.
This is sort of a question that is hard to answer. I definitely would suggest it to new users. However, those new users have to be aware that there will be some command line learning involved in order to manage the system properly. That's getting better, but it's not where it needs to be quite yet.
Iron Claw.
Well, I'd have to qualify it a little bit. For a rank beginner, I would not probably suggest Manjaro at this time, but for a beginner who is at least moderately technically proficient and technically curious and wants to know how their system works and to have the ultimate in control over their system, I would absolutely suggest it right now.
Matthew.
Well, I would absolutely recommend it to a beginner for a few reasons. First of all, how many Windows users do you know that never have ever reinstalled their operating systems? I know quite a few. So the fact that it's a rolling release and it's stable and user-friendly, I think that would be a good place for a Windows user coming over as a beginner. And people mention that you need to be aware that there might be command line work, there may be other quirks that you might have to deal with, but I'm of the opinion that you're going to run into that with any distribution. No matter what distribution you have, no matter how user-friendly it attempts to be, eventually you're going to run into that. And at the end of the day, the new users are probably going to call you for tech support anyway, so why not? Just dive right in.
Phil, would you recommend Manjaro to beginners?
Well, it depends how you define beginners. We have a lot of people asking questions and we have a lot of people answering them. So yes, why not? If you know how to install a software and you have some little time to do it for you, well, then yes.
Ringo.
Yes, I would say my neighbors and all my friends, I will push it on. But like my wife and my son, they use Manjaro and they use Octopi and they never ask help for updating. They do it by themselves and they only play Facebook and some games and no argue about it. They are always click and run.
Rob.
As long as it's a new user that's enthused about Linux and even if they don't know very much, but they're willing to learn a bit and whatever, then certainly. I mean, if it's someone who just, doesn't want to learn anything about the OS, doesn't want to have to deal with any kind of maintenance at all ever, maybe not. If they're just, as long as they're a little bit enthused and interested in learning a bit about Linux, then sure, it's a great distro to learn Linux,
Matthew.
Let's also not forget about those users that are old-time Windows users. Their computers are getting old and they might not want to buy new hardware. Manjaro is also a good choice for those people that have that older hardware that don't necessarily want to upgrade as well.
Rob.
It is, because being the Arch Linux base, it's very fast, i686 optimized Arch Linux base. It's great for old hardware in that respect, and it's also great for new hardware as well, like very late laptops, because we offer the latest kernels, which, much later than what you're going to find in any distro. So brand new laptops and stuff, we get better compatibility with them quickly.
Countrified.
There's a lot of great ideas being talked about, but I think what will make it even better for brand new users is to, in the last session, to have a 5 or 10 minute tutorial video right there on the wallpaper they can access.
Edge.
Yeah, I agree in terms of the compatibility and everything like that with hardware. It's also nice that we can switch our kernels around to provide good hardware support as well, because Arch Linux itself, as we all know, runs the latest kernel, which sometimes you have regression issues with old hardware. So it's nice that we have a mix of the new and the old.
Iron Claw, your turn.
I would have to agree about the newest kernels, by the way, because the one fairly major problem I had was with my SATA controller, and moving to a newer kernel fixed it.
And here's my take on this. Would I recommend Manjaro to beginners? Absolutely. But these would be the types of people that know how to get support online. You have a little computer know-how. You've used Windows for years. You've gone on IRC. You've gone on forums to get support. You know how to dig around for answers. Those are the kind of beginners that I would recommend this to. But people who are complete neophytes and don't even know how to turn on a computer probably wouldn't recommend it to them. I would suggest something like Zorin OS for beginners or Linux Lite for those people that are really new, but people that have a little computer smarts in their head and they've never tried a Linux distribution before, but I would recommend it wholeheartedly. Absolutely. All right.
Well, it sounds like you and I are on the same page there.
Absolutely. All right. Let's move on to final thoughts because we have run out of time, folks. We'll start with you, Countrified Linux. I keep saying Country Fried.
Hey, Spectre, I ain't fried. Final thoughts. I think it's a great operating system. Funny, I end my reviews with final thoughts, but I think.
But you have a loss for words now.
Not really. I mean, there's always room for improvement. Rolling distro, those improvements will come pretty quickly. So far, I've been impressed with it, and I'm looking forward to what's ahead.
Edge, final thoughts.
Final thoughts are, in general, I'm really happy with the distro. It's easy to work with. It was easy to do my spin. It took a little bit of searching and reviewing code, but it's been easy to work with and modify how I wanted it to. And I've been working on getting it on Chromebooks, and so yeah, that's been fairly easy as well. And it's just been a pleasure of a system to work with.
Iron Claw.
Well, for the brief few days that I've used it, and I've used it as my main desktop system during that time, few hiccups, but nothing truly unexpected. Overall, it's been very, very good, and I say this as a user who uninstalled OpenSUSE on that machine that worked perfectly on that machine to to install this and try it, and I'm overall very, very pleased with what I've got so far.
Matthew.
Well, I think that as young as this distribution is, it has surged in popularity exceptionally quickly, more than any other distro that I remember. So yeah, I'd have to say that user friendliness has to be playing a role in that. Stability is another. The fact that it's a rolling release and can be stable at the same time is another big reason. And yeah, just let's keep this momentum going. Keep bringing the awesome.
There you have it. And let's switch it up a little bit because I want Phil to have the final thought. So we'll go to you, Rob. What are your final thoughts?
Well, I think Manjaro's got a pretty bright future. It offers an entry point for novices into what I think is one of the greatest Linux distributions on the planet, an Arch Linux-based system. And, that alone means that it will attract attention and people are going to be interested in it. And I'd say its future, is very bright.
Ringo.
If you are open to learn, it's good to learn to start with, because you don't mix with other distributions. So for me, it's good if you are open to learn.
Phil, what are your final thoughts?
Well, we are open, as you already know. The community is open, the developers are friendly, so we don't say no at the first time. So, well, if you want to help us, if you want to join our development team, just come to us, just mail me directly, and everybody will find his place in our team, and we will do some amazing stuff.
And that's the thing. Manjaro keeps bringing goodness to the table with every release. It keeps getting better and better. And this is still beta software. We haven't even reached version 1 yet. This is amazing distribution that can be used from day to day. There is a flavor of Manjaro from everyone, from the KDE desktop, the XFCE, OpenBox. We have it covered, for every user that's out there. This is an amazing piece of software. And I highly recommend that you guys that are listening to this podcast, at least download the live CD and give it a try. It's well worth your time. I want to thank Countrified Linux for joining us, Edge 266, Ironclaw, thank you, Matthew Moore, Phil M., thank you for being on the show, Ringo 32, thank you, and of course I'd like to thank Rob. I appreciate having all of you here, as well as I'd like to thank Voltam and the Linux distro community for hosting this podcast. And I'd like to thank everybody who has been participating through IRC and everybody who has joined us in the listening room. We have had record-breaking numbers tonight. Amazing stuff. Awesome show. Thank you, all of you, once again, and we will see you next time.
Today's show was brought to you by the Linux distro community. Visit us today at linuxdistrocommunity.com and chat with us on Mumble or in IRC on the Freenode network in the Linux Distro Community channel. The Linux Distro Community. Freedom through the sharing of knowledge.